Good morning. You're listening to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance. And now, sharing his knowledge, here's your host, Matt Libby.
All right, good morning. Welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. Great news. Got a guest today. You don't have to listen to just me. I've got Becca Duncan here. She is with A1 Trainer 101, or not A1, AI. We'll talk a little bit about that. Kind of interesting. I've been doing this show for a while, and I'm sure people who listen to this are familiar with Hip Cookville. And somebody had posted on there, said, hey, I know it's probably going to be, I'd like a list of veteran-owned businesses. So that's how I met Becca was she posted her business on there, and I said, oh, we need to get together. You need to be on the show.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm excited to be here. Right.
So I'm going to kind of back up since we are a veteran. We haven't talked about, we just met actually in person here this morning as we're getting ready to do the show. We haven't talked about each other's backstory. Tell us a little bit about your military career, and then we'll talk about how you started AI Trainer and such as that.
Okay. Well, my military career was actually pretty short. I was only in for a year. I graduated college and thought that I wanted to be an officer, so I enlisted because I thought that was the best way to figure out how to do it.
I totally understand. That's similar to what I did.
Yeah, so I did that. And when I went in, I had my college degree. I was married and all of that. And then I got pregnant, which was not in the works. And they give you the option to get out. So my command sergeant major said that though he thought I was a great soldier, he thought I had more of a college mindset. And his exact words were, every time I ask you to do something, you say, but Sergeant Major, if we did it like this, it could be cheaper or faster or better.
I totally understand
and
that.
So due to that, I made the decision to go ahead and get out. My parents were both officers, but I enjoyed my time in.
So what branch?
Army.
Army. Well, you said Sergeant Major. I probably should have figured that. Well, it could have been Marines. I knew it wasn't Air Force. They don't have Sergeant Majors.
Yeah, the Army.
Or Sergeants Major. We always plural the wrong end of it. But yeah, I can understand. I can read between the lines of, okay, she's got a new baby. She's going to be a hassle. We can convince her that she should probably just call it quits, and I won't have to deal with, and I can get somebody in to replace her. I was served when basically it was, you're pregnant, you're out. There wasn't any option when I first came. I went in 77. I'm a little older than you.
Oh, right.
But I totally get that. And you mentioned about, I want to know what it's like to be enlisted, before I'm an officer. And that was kind of the attitude I took. I was wanting to go to flight school in the Army, and I guess they still do. You can enlist, and basically once you complete basic training, go to the warrant officer training, and become a warrant officer and be a pilot. So that was kind of my plan. I enlisted in aviation, never made it to flight school, but did serve 20 years. So
wow,
I did the tour, enlistment as an enlisted person. My whole career as a enlisted person. What was your specialty then in the Army?
I was 71 Lima, so I was administrative.
Administrative, yeah.
And my parents, being officers, they tried to talk me out of going that route. They immediately said, you have a college degree, go to OCS. And I was like, no, that's just not how I thought things should be done.
Yeah, and I think you probably, even there, you can kind of, if you didn't do ROTC, you could still kind of enlist to go to OCS. And it would have been kind of like the flight school thing of, okay, you go through basic training, and then you go through the officer basic. I think there are avenues that way. It seems like it makes sense. And that was the other thing I found was OCS is one of those things. I got my degree while I was in, so I had debated on doing that. And one of the things was if you had at least a 2-year degree, you could do OCS, and you just had to complete your other 2 years once you were commissioned. So I could have gone before I got my 4-year degree, because that was like almost right at the tail end of my career when I finally completed the 4-year degree. I always could joke, it's like, yep, I just crammed 4 years of college into 17 years of my military career.
Right.
Because going to school part-time, doing CLEP tests, get credit for some of my military training, all those things bundled together to get my degree. But OCS was, if you were going to do OCS, you had to do it prior to having 10 years in service. If you waited after 10 years in service, you couldn't do OCS. And one of their reasons on that, if you've been enlisted for 10 years, you're too set in the enlisted side to be an officer. I think it's actually a little more sinister than that. I'm a little more cynical on it. It basically is, you're probably familiar with the term RIF, reduction in force.
Right.
And especially on the officer side, not as much on the enlisted side, there is some, but especially on the officer side, the up or out. well, problem is, if you got 10 years in service, you can retire as a captain. If you go, 10 years enlisted and then 10 years an officer and don't make major, you can still retire as a captain. Well, if you're not pushing hard to get major, they really would rather you leave.
Right.
And so that's why they don't want you to be over 10 years, because you're like, I'm okay.
Just ride it out.
And then just ride it out, which is kind of what happened to me at the end of my career. I got stationed in Korea right there towards the tail end. And I tell people, I had a commander who he was in that situation. He was that he needed to make major, and he made some changes to be able. The company commander in our unit, he was a pilot, and he was a Chinook pilot, and ended up in an Apache battalion as our maintenance officer, so that he could get command time. And he was stressing so much on that I've got to get promoted that it kind of made our lives miserable. So I was quite a buffer between him and my troops. I was an E7 at the time, had my 18 years in. As long as I kept my nose clean, I was going to retire. A little after I got back from Korea. So I was pretty much in a situation didn't expect to make E8 and stay longer. So as long as I did like you talked about with your sergeant major, I would tell him when I thought he was wrong. He didn't like that.
Right. I went in as an E4 due to having a college degree.
Yeah.
And so I went in as a specialist and didn't even know what parade rest was.
Yeah.
So when I got to boot camp, my main drill sergeant was an E6 with 14 years, and so he hated me from the moment I stepped off the bus.
Yeah.
But after I got out of boot camp, then I loved it. I was at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, and I loved it there. I still have friends that were with me there.
Right. Well, when I was in, you mentioned the 71 Lima was a dead end MOS. I mean, it was a good job. It was a great, and I think that was part of it was, generally you usually either worked you said, you worked sergeant major, you worked at the battalion level, or you worked at the, the brigade or division level doing all those personnel tasks. And everybody liked, I'm sorry, I apologize. No, cushy job. Yeah. And so people stayed in it, but they couldn't get promoted because it was like nobody would get out. And it was just a big glut, and I ran into people that had, when I was like, E6 or actually men at E7, they were still E5. And they had as much time, time in service as I did because they just could not move up in that field. So you probably learned some good. Well, then again, I don't know. You already had your college degree, so you probably didn't learn a lot in that MOS. I know you learned a lot in basic training because that was probably very eye-opening. Yes,
that was different. Yeah. They said before I went in, whatever you do, just don't be platoon guide. But because I came off of the bus as a E4, he immediately said platoon guide. So I was in the best shape of my life by the end of that couple months. Because they
thought you knew something. I had junior ROTC. And in fact, it was Air Force junior ROTC. But because I, was hoping to fly, I went in the Army, but I went aviation. But because of my 3 years of junior ROTC, I went in as an E3. Probably the only one in my whole company that actually had that rank to where there was a couple of people that had, the E2, they had we called them the mosquito wings. Right. Like you used to say, I had the pregnant mosquito. I still ended up wearing that rank a long time. It ended up at a promotion freeze that hit shortly after. My roommates when I got to permanent party in Germany, and went to basic like a month or two before me. 1 month, they all got promoted to E4. And then the next month we had a freeze. And that was the month that I had 13 months and would have had it, and I waited another 10 months to get promoted. So I had almost 2 years before I went from 3 to 4. So, yeah, and I don't want to talk too much on that. That's not what our audience is here for, but one of the reasons I asked Becca to be on is, and if you've listened to the show, as a veteran, I like to do things that veteran, highlight things that veterans are doing. And she mentioned just before we started that she has a nonprofit that she's passionate about too. So those are two things I ask people is like, hey, you don't have to be in insurance or do something insurance related to be on my show because I want to highlight veterans. And then, like I said, and if you have a nonprofit you're passionate about, I want you to share that. I think we're going to get 2 shows today. So there will be a second, we'll do a second part to this show. So we may focus a little bit more on what's going on with AI Trainer and then move into the nonprofit. We'll fill the time we always do. We've already we've hit 2/3 of our first segment yet. So, and haven't even got in it. So, what was your degree? You said you had your bachelor's before you went in the Army. Right. So, my bachelor's is in food service management. Food service. So, I've always been a chef and a pastry chef and a culinary educator. Oh, there's a lot to break out there.
Yeah.
So you went in, so then you had the administrative job in the Army. How long post-Army career did you start AI Trainer? Did you have some other jobs in between from there? Or is that something you kind of were starting?
Oh, no,
right
I just have started it.
Just started, yeah.
I've just started it. So my whole career was, the majority of it was spent in Naples, Florida, and as a chef, pastry chef, and a culinary educator. So
Time to get out of the kitchen, huh?
Yes, definitely. So when I moved back here, I grew up here and then lived there for 25 years. So when I moved back here, then I was trying to figure out what to do. So I did food for a little bit, and then I worked in Nashville a little bit, and then now I run Helping Hands at Putnam County, which is a nonprofit here. We do food, rental assistance, utilities, fuel for out of county, doctor's appointments, prescriptions, and we vet for the CRMC Foundation. That organization will be 50 years old in July.
Oh, wow.
So we're hoping to do a big 70s party fundraiser, that to kind of celebrate 50 years.
Yeah, I can't remember now who did the fundraiser, or I think it was done as a fundraiser, and we talked about doing, somebody just did not Downton Abbey, Bridgerton themed.
Was that Plenty bookstore?
Yeah, I think maybe. I don't remember what, but they were doing a fundraiser for something. But we've enjoyed watching I actually like the Bridgerton show. It's a little different. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. It's not Elizabeth. It was King George, England. It was Queen Charlotte. But the actors are very diverse ethnically, and so it's really kind of weird because you're used to watching all the period pieces, and you'll see like black servants but everybody of all the nobility, they're all white. This one, it's all mixed up. I mean, the families will be ethnically the same, so it's not. I've seen some shows that do that. It's weird. That's too weird because it's like, you got a white mom and a black dad and an Asian kid. And it's like, that doesn't work. It's just interesting the different ethnic styles they would do on the show. It's centered around each year, the ball, the promenade, the young ladies that, they're coming out and they come through and they all have to process in front of the queen, and the queen picks her diamond for that year, and that's the lady. And then of course they're the most eligible bachelors, the ones the dukes and earls that that's the one the young ladies should be hoping are courting them and all. And it I don't know, it enjoy it because it's kind of historical fiction but with that twist. And then there's a little somebody's writing a yellow journalism, a little column that gets printed, and she's anonymous. Oops, and we've gone over the break. So we will, anyway, I'll finish talking about this. We may have to squeeze this in after the break. One of the characters, because it takes a while before you figure out which character is writing this little article, but it would get published like right after one of the balls. And, the fly on the wall kind of comments, and it was irritating the queen because sometimes it didn't make the queen look good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting show. I think there's like 3 seasons now, but and then the Bridgertons are the family. The Viscount is that family. So that's what its name. It's not the name of the town, but it's that family's the central family. But it's that, it's not Elizabeth in England, but kind of in close to that time frame that, the old puffy gowns and all that. So she thought, that'd be fun. I could make some stuff, but we ended up not doing it. And I got way off track talking about the fundraising thing. But let's take the break here.
Call us before you dig. Accidents are caused each year because someone broke a gas line that they didn't know was there. Remember, not all of our lines are in the street. They go through your yard to the house. Don't take a chance. The Cookeville Gas Department will gladly check any area before you dig and tell you if there are any gas lines present. Help us keep natural gas the safest energy there is. Natural gas. Energy for life. This message brought to you in the interest of safety from the Cookeville Gas Department in cooperation with the Tennessee Public Utility Commission.
It's Freaky Day from Middle Tennessee Eye. Are things blurry right now? Hey, it's football season. Maybe you're having trouble seeing the scoreboard. If you can't tell which team is your team, well, you probably need LASIK. Do what I did. I got LASIK surgery done with Dr. Alyssa Hudson and Middle Tennessee Eye. Say goodbye to contacts, say goodbye to glasses, and say hello to clear vision with LASIK so you can enjoy your game. You know, when you see Dr. Hudson, nothing is more important than ensuring your eyes are healthy and your vision is the best it can be. Book your exam today with Dr. Hudson at 931-372-1994.
Willow Window can help transform your home with windows, window treatments, entry doors, or garage doors. It not only elevates your design, but also optimizes energy efficiency and comfort. Their installers take the utmost care while in your home and will haul everything away when they're done. Call for your free estimate today at 931-946-3691. That's 931-WINDOW1.
And now, back to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby Insurance.
We are back. So how did AI Trainer come about?
Because as director of Helping Hands, I was writing grants and looking for grants. And I felt like every time I went to go do a grant, I was like reinventing the wheel. The questions were similar, but they weren't the same. And so I would have to go back in and I would copy and paste an old response into Word, then kind of try to revamp it. And one of my friends said, have you ever tried ChatGPT? And he's a software developer.
Yeah.
And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then he showed me, and I immediately knew that was going to be the future.
Right.
And so I dove in. It has been now probably maybe going on a year and a half that I've been using it. I mean, not just ChatGPT. I use a ton of different platforms, and it just simplified everything. Yeah, I just became almost obsessed with it. And then I realized that being in the business I am in with Helping Hands, that maybe this is a ticket for people who have struggled, or maybe they can't write as well, or those kinds of things, to be able to excel in things and in areas that they haven't been able to do before. And so that was more, when I first started thinking about the business, that was more, how could I get people to do what they haven't been able to do before in a shorter amount of time to be able to be productive. We have a lot of people that come into Helping Hands that are on disability, those kinds of things, but maybe their disability would allow them to be able to use this platform and actually do something, whereas no, they may not be able to stand all day, or they may not be able to work a factory job, but maybe we could create things that they can do and be productive and be able to give back to society at the same time.
How do you present your services? Do you get people in at like a seminar, or is it more one-on-one? Or
So far what I have done are just classes. I run the class and I just go and I list the price, and this is what the class is. You know, it's a beginner AI class or a beginner AI class and then 4 nonprofits. So the last part of the class, the beginning of the class is the same, and then the end is like 4 nonprofits, and then we can go in
those nonprofits.
How we can go in and utilize it for grant writing or for inventory control or analyzing financials, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, it was like, I'm trying to think, what was I just did recently? I had typed something up, sent it to my office manager, and said, "Here's my rough draft. What do you think?" He said, "Yeah, let's see what chat says." You know, and it did. It just and actually, and there was, she noticed. She's like, "It's changed." It was like just revising what we wrote. It said, who's your target audience on this? Is it existing clients or prospective clients? And she's like, wow, I didn't see it do that. So there's a lot of stuff that it does, and it does anticipate. Now, you mentioned the classes. No, now you do them all in person, or do you do any virtual classes with it?
I don't do virtual yet. I'm sure that I will, but when I started researching, no one is doing in person. And when I say no one, I mean no one is, because there's so much money online to be made. And I I just kind of wanted to start with our community here first.
Right. So you saw it more of as a service than a moneymaker. So,
right.
You know, I mean,
right.
Granted, hey, it's kind of like I say with, when helping folks with Medicare is I've got an article coming out in a publication here soon that, talks about kind of my thing is I get to help people.
Right.
But I can earn a living doing it versus, no, I want to be so efficient. I want to talk to a different person every 30 minutes and sign up a new client and make $100,000 in 6 months. Yeah, I'd love to make $100,000 in 6 months, but not at the expense of not helping any. Because the other thing too on that is if that's the way you do business, it doesn't stick.
Right.
I don't lose because I do a lot, like I said, with Medicare. Most of the clients I lose is because they're no longer with us. Not because they decided to get insurance from somebody else.
Right.
Most of my clients stay with me. In fact, this week, I think it was 2017, a lady I helped with her plan, and she's got an elderly neighbor and says, hey, you need to help, can you help her? So I'm doing that one. And then yesterday, a client called me again, that kind of that same time frame that was like, hey, there's been some changes in my life. I need your help. This good, in Kingsport. And the great thing was at that time, early in my career, I did what I call my road warrior days, and I made a lot of house calls, and I'd drive, and I lived in Oak Ridge at that time, so it wasn't like driving from here to Kingsport, but it still was, a good hour and a half drive to get there, or almost 2 hours, or, and the other one was in Greenville. So it was like, but I'm doing everything online, for those now. I can do so much online. We've got not just AI, but just automation. I'm so glad that the Medicare industry finally, I joke sometimes, talk about, they finally joined the 20th century, and we're in the 21st. I started in 2013 or 2014, actually, with doing Medicare. It was all paper apps. Everything was in person, on paper. We started doing doing most stuff electronically, and COVID actually helped our business because we were able to do a lot more online with the e-signatures and things like that. But there's still companies out there today. I've got a life insurance company. I can do it electronically, but I have to be in person. I can't do it as a remote, And what it is, we have to do what they call field underwriting. I could tell you, yes, I'm 5'10" and 185 pounds. Well, I need to put almost, another 100 on that. Actually, I think I'm about 165 right now. So it's not... But height and weight matters on some plans that you're doing. So they want you to say, I saw the person, they weren't on oxygen, they weren't smoking cigarettes, Okay, you met with them, and we've already seen that they've got history of some smoking-related issues, but you marked they're a non-smoker. They didn't smoke at all the whole time you were there. Your life insurance, it's like, so it's like you have, whereas I'm talking to somebody on the phone to tell me you're a non-smoker, I just have to take their word for it. I don't know.
Right.
So that's, so they want that in person. And I like the in-person touch. I have an office here in town. That's where but it's a couple years ago, I finally did the thing. It was like during enrollment season, I'm like, if you want help this week or this week and the next week, here's the time slots in my office. You can be there, because I would go from one person to the next. I have people waiting in the waiting area for me to get done, and which also kind of helps get done too, because sometimes we can just keep talking and we don't get done, and it's like, oh, I really should move on to my next task. But you don't want to push somebody away. But if they know someone's waiting to come in, then they realize, oh, we need to try to get this done. So I don't want to hold that. They'll have a little bit of courtesy for the person behind them that's waiting, because nobody likes to wait.
Right. And then the other thing, too, is to be able to go into businesses and train their whole staff at once. That is also another place that I think would be excellent for companies that can automate things that will save tons of time, which in return will save money.
Right.
So... yeah, I love it. I love it.
Well, before I run out of time, what's the best way for people to reach you?
Right now, they are still revamping my website. So at my email, it's Becca, Becca, at a1trainer101.com.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that because I went to try to pull up your website and it's like, oh, it's not active. You have your Facebook page, so she's got that, but her email works because she and I have emailed each other. So she's got the domain, you just don't have that website set up. And I always say, if you're not sure, if you're listening to this while you're driving, always remember you can go to insurancematchmaking.com and send me a message and, hey, who was that lady who was talking about AI? How do I reach her? And I can send you her contact info. But I always, want everybody to give what your preferred way of contact. Is it email? Do you have a phone number listed on your Facebook page, or do you just, you prefer people kind of
It's easier
reach out to
if
electronically.
Yes, it's easier if they go either through Facebook Messenger on my page, A1 Trainer 101, or they email me.
Okay,
And then hopefully within the next week, my website will be up and running and I'll be able to schedule my classes on there and everything. That's the goal.
Yeah. So we're coming up close to the end of this show here. We are going to do a second show, so should air the following week from when you're listening to this one. And as always, we do get our shows put on YouTube later, basically as a podcast. So you can keep up with us and check out past shows. So until then, see you on the radio.
You've been listening to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance.